Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. My speaker today is Jill Johnson-Young, who's going to be speaking with us today about losing a partner or spouse to death, being a widow, and returning to dating after that. And Jill, could you tell us a little bit about your work and your practice?
Sure. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I own, together with a business partner, a large practice in Southern California. We have offices in 3 places, which are all now closed because of COVID, so everybody's working remotely. I did hospice for about 12, 13 years in 2 states, and ended up as a director for all the psychosocial staff for one of them. And then we opened our practice 11 years ago now, and my specialties are grief, loss, death, dying, and dementia. I am all the fun. I also write books about grief and loss and books for kids and their parents about grief and loss, various kinds of losses. I've got another major book coming out, hopefully the end of this year. It's in the final edit now.
Well, and I'm glad that you have, it's important to have a sense of humor about this stuff, because I think,
it's the only way to do grief.
Yeah, truly. It's a good point. So what are some of the toughest issues that you've seen for clients or patients after the death of a spouse or a partner?
When an intimate partner is lost, which is how we tend to describe it that way, folks don't stumble over who's who and genders and all that. It's just intimate partner dies. What happens is, in general, if there's been a long-term illness, and this is research-based, Johns Hopkins and a few others did some research on it. If there's been a long illness, that spouse or intimate partner has had time to do all the anticipatory grief, to say the goodbyes. They are exhausted by the time of the death, and they have reorganized their life in their head before that person died. They're sitting bedside, the last breath is taken. It's a surreal moment. But after the initial shock that happens, no matter if you're expecting it or not, there's a really fast recovery. It's about 3 months for someone who's been expecting a death and has been through a long illness and been the primary caregiver. That means the rest of the family and the rest of the friends are still in their really initial adapting. And because they're not grieving on a daily basis, they're sort of reminded to grieve when they're, around the person who lost their intimate partner.
Yeah.
They're way slower on their grief process. So when that survivor is ready to date again, they are met with intense resistance, lots of ugliness, and guaranteed they will lose some friends and family, at least for a time, which they're not expecting, because, we have what to expect when you're expecting. We don't have what to expect when your spouse dies and you can't wait for some intimacy and sex again. There's no book.
Yes. And I've seen that definitely in my own work, for sure, with my own patients. It's really challenging. Yeah, a lot of resentment, a lot of difficult feelings and difficult navigation.
It's hard enough when you're considering dating, and especially if you've been married a long time. For those who don't know, I've been widowed twice. My first wife and I were married 23 years. Wow. We got married 3 times because of legal stuff, because Prop 8. Yeah. And then I remarried relatively soon afterward because she wanted me to marry her hospice nurse, and she told the whole planet we were supposed to get married. Wow. And it turns out she was right. And then that spouse ended up with Lewy body dementia, and she died within 3.5 years, which was very fast. And now I'm remarried. But when you've been married for a long time, you literally haven't taken your clothes off in front of anyone else except perhaps a doctor. And even then you're wearing a sheet.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? How do you do that part? How fast do you do it? What happens if you got kids at home?
Yeah.
All the things that other couples have, it's that whole, how do I do this without feeling completely weirded out and with all of the criticism that I know is coming?
Yeah.
Because it will.
You engage in intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems really tough. Are there other types of reactions that you see in this population, or like you said, in quote unquote the supportive network, around them, the people who are supposed to be supporting them around them?
There are usually a few people who go, oh wait, and they're usually the people who were there during the illness or who were there at the time of the accident and scooped them off the floor of the emergency room, right? those people tend to be more supportive. The
Mm-hmm.
right in their people, not the super close, the right in their people tend to say, you know what, I can see that you need someone to hold hands with.
Yeah.
Those people tend to be more supportive. They also sometimes in my clientele that I work with will come up with people for them to date.
Mm.
They're protective of who they're dating. They
Yes.
want to make sure that they're safe and they're okay and they're not going to get screwed around with, or it's not going to be one of those online ones where it's not the real person.
Yeah.
Those folks tend to be protective of that. And they also tend to throw up a defense around the widow or widower. Now, the other thing that's interesting is when it's a widower, there's a lot more acceptance of dating.
Yeah.
It's expected. If people think it's kind of funny, it's cliche. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's men are supposed to get back out there,
Mm-hmm.
and women are supposed to be Queen Victoria.
Right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too. Yeah.
And Queen Victoria pulled it off. She had all the black crepe and all the black stuff, but she had a boyfriend within about 6 months of her first husband's death. And that her first husband was the love of her life. Apparently, so was the other guy. But after she died, her kids erased both men, one of whom she looks like she'd been intimate with, one she hadn't, but was very close to. They threw all the pictures. They got rid of the diaries. Only a few things survived that the kids didn't notice.
Yeah.
Because she was breaking the widow rules. And you can't break the widow rules. It's absolutely abhorrent to people around you to break the widow rules.
Right. That women are supposed to be pious and non-sexual beings, right?
Oh, right. You're not supposed to look happy. If you look happy too much, then you're not grieving enough. If you grieve too much and it makes people sad, then that's not okay either. You know, you can go out to dinner, but only in groups because then you've got chaperones, and you know, there's these rules that, again, nobody talks about. But the first time I was widowed, a friend of mine who'd been widowed 2 years before took me out and she said, okay, here's the deal. This is how it works. I'm going to tell you what I got told, and then you're going to pay it forward to the next widow. And it's true. There's an unwritten list of rules.
Yeah. So, how can someone who is a supportive friend or family member aid or support someone in overcoming these kinds of hurdles? I mean, again, you mentioned that piece of like the people who are in there, but you know, how can you support someone you care about in terms of dating after a trauma like losing a spouse or a partner, an intimate?
You can make sure you tell them out loud when you've sat with them a bit. You know, you don't want to walk in and say, by the way, I think it's really cool if you start dating again. But you hang out a little bit, you spend some time really truly holding space. You've been there in the initial grief process, which gives you more of a door. And you can say out loud, and you should say out loud, you know what, when it is time for you to date again, I am totally there with you. Yeah. I would be happy to be part of whatever you need. You can, you know, make some jokes about, we're going to make them run the gauntlet. You know, we're going to get all the girlfriends together and they're going to have to prove themselves. You can joke around a little bit about it, but you say out loud, really, truly out loud, I am there with you and I support you and I'm not going to criticize you. And if it's not the right person, I'm not going to say I told you so.
Yeah.
Because when we were all dating, when we were teenagers and young adults with first spouse, you know, you make some mistakes. There are some frogs along the way sometimes.
Definitely.
So you support them in those things. And then you also tell them, if anyone criticizes you, let me know, because I'll do whatever you need, because I want you to be happy again. I want you to smile again. I want you to enjoy life again. It doesn't mean that you have left the other person's memory behind, because you haven't. That person's always with you.
Right. Right. Truly.
Everybody talks to dead people. It's completely normal.
Yeah. Or people when they're not necessarily with them, even if they're still alive, right?
Right. We have the conversations.
Right? I'm with you even when I'm not with you. You're at school, you're in my heart, and I'm in yours, right? And
right. The invisible string, it's real.
Yeah. So what is the best place for someone to, if there is a best place, for someone to begin dating after the death of a spouse or partner? Is it going and telling friends and family? this is what I'm up to? Is it not telling you? What, is there a right spot to start? Right place to start?
It's really so unique per person, depending on who their family and friend system is. If they've got supportive people, it's been my experience for my clients and myself to start with people you know.
Mm-hmm.
If there's been a long illness, then your entire system knows that your partner has died.
Mm-hmm.
You are now without an intimate partner. So there may be people who are actually interested in dating you and totally afraid of looking like some kind of jerk for wanting to step forward.
Yeah.
So you can put the word out through friends. You can write a few posts on social media saying, boy, it's time, and I'm floundering around in this, and there will be people. Now there'll be criticism,
Yeah.
but there will be people who say, okay, I got the open door now. I've had some who've gone online and had some success, but I've had a lot who've gone online and found not great success. There are some groups online for widows and widowers in specific.
Mm-hmm.
And in those, I caution my clients to really look at the tenor of the group, because some of those groups and some grief groups online that are just sort of Facebook pages where everybody kind of hangs out, some of them have a culture of, you are not supposed to recover. You're not supposed to smile again. You're not supposed to be okay. Grief lasts forever. That kind of thing. You don't want that group.
Mm-hmm.
You want the group that says, I hope that you get to smiling again. And there's people who've done that in the group and they're still there. You want that kind of first step forward group.
Yeah.
Invariably, there's somebody in your local area or somebody who knows someone in your local area, because there are thousands of people in each of those groups.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. You already mentioned a little bit about what brought you to this work. And I was going to ask you, um, and again, I don't know if you're comfortable talking with us about this, but if it would be okay with you, would you share a little bit about what it was like for you to have that experience of your wife before she died telling you that she wanted you to marry her hospice nurse? Like, that's a really special thing. And yet, I don't want to say it's like not that unusual, but it's not, I've heard of that kind of thing happening before, or at least a like, I want you to marry someone again, right? I want you to get together with someone. So there's oftentimes that blessing when there is an illness.
There actually is, and even when there's a sudden death and the person who's about to die knows it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I like to share with folks is, if you listen to the recordings on 9/11 from the people who left messages on voicemails,
Mm-hmm.
when they were on that plane, that one plane that went down in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
every single one who called a spouse and left a message said some version of, I love you, don't forget me, please move on with your life and find love again.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right, it's not unusual. It's what, if you are dying and you know it and you're married, you don't want your spouse probably to be sad for the rest of their life. It's kind of a lousy way to leave the world. And when I worked for hospice, that's what I found continuously. But my wife, Linda, my first wife, was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, stage 3, 10 years before she died. And she beat it. But we were told that she had 6 months when she was first diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent that time doing intense chemo with all the side effects that lasted for another year, preparing for her to die.
Mm-hmm.
Then she got better. And then because of the chemo, she ended up with a disease called pulmonary fibrosis, which brought on right-sided heart failure, which is a 100% fatal diagnosis. You can't beat that one. It does the same damage to lungs as what COVID is doing to people who are in the ICUs intubated. The scans look the same.
Mm-hmm.
So she was sick the second time for about 3.5 years. And we knew she was going to die for that entire time. We prepared ourselves, we prepared our kids. When we finally got married legally in 2008, we were actually told that very week that she had only months to live. Mm-hmm. And so we made ourselves wedding vows that had nothing about till death do us part, because that seemed really kind of creepy to do at that point. And we celebrated our love, but we also knew she was going to die. So as she moved into hospice, which I'd worked for hospice for a long time previously, I was the one who requested it. You get close to your nurses in hospice. They're there, they're doing intimate care, they're in your home, they get to know your family. There was one particular nurse that was just like Linda. She started out as an LVN, she had family in the South. She believes that LVNs are the better nurses because they've actually done all the hands-on care. They had so many similarities, and I didn't know it because I was working, but Casper was coming over on lunch hours, which she never took, and bringing Linda Yoo-hoos and chocolate chips and that kind of stuff. And they hung out together and they talked about her death together, the way Linda and I had been talking about it as partners for 3 years. And Linda just took such a liking to her that she told her one day, you have to come back and get Jill after I'm dead. And because they're nurses, they talk that way.
Yeah.
And Casper said, you have got to be kidding. I'm your nurse. I love your whole family. I love your kids. I am not going to tell you I'm marrying your wife. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
And she told me, she told my mom, she told my kids, she told our minister, she told our best friends, she told my girlfriends group, she told everybody that we were the match, and she could not die peacefully if she didn't think that I was going to have someone to come in and be with me and help with the kids, because we had 3 kids, one of whom we were just taking placement of at age 16 in that moment. And it felt creepy to me, and I completely ignored it under this and to say I will be friends with her because I like her, but that's as far as it's going. I'm married to you. My heart's with you. You're about to break my heart. Damn it. Stop it.
Yeah.
And yet the day she died, Casper was there, and the one person who I could look at and lock eyes with and go, it's okay. It's all right. We're going to get through this. That was Casper. I pursued her. I'll be completely honest. We had coffee 3 weeks later. We texted a lot. It was like it was meant to be, and it felt so much better because I had Linda's blessing.
Yeah.
So that when I caught all kinds of nonsense from even some of our best friends, one set of whom I've not spoken to since, it didn't matter because I knew that I was doing what was right for me, for Linda, for Linda's memory, for the kids. So it felt sort of like Fantasy Island for those who are old enough to remember that show, but it was the right Fantasy Island.
Yeah.
It really was.
Wait, and it's interesting. I was thinking it might have been hard not to kind of fulfill that promise in a way. Like you might have felt like you were letting her down if you didn't.
She left me a 3-page bucket list of things to finish.
Wow.
It took me 4 years to finish it all.
I was going to ask how you did.
The last piece was the youngest kid crossing at the graduation stage. When that happened, I was like, yes, I'm done.
Apparently not, Jill. Apparently.
Right. Yes.
So thank you so much for talking with me about, like you said, I mean, I think it's so difficult for a lot of people to have humor around like such difficult issues, and yet it's so important. So thank you for talking with me openly, honestly, about
you're so welcome.
Your experience, and also your experience helping others, go through this process. Where can people who are interested find you to learn more about you and the work that you do?
I have a .com website, JillJohnsonYoung.com, no hyphens, no caps. I'm on Facebook as Jill Johnson Young, LCSW. I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. Those links are on my .com. I couldn't tell you my handles because a 20-year-old handles that for me, but I'm on all the social media, and then the books that I have are on Amazon and available there.
Great. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.